Emperor Zexthul smashed his throne room table in rage when he received Admiral Vexnoth's report. The thick metal table, made from the strongest materials in the Empire, cracked down the middle under the force of his 4 fists. Around the room, his advisors stepped back in fear. No one had ever seen the Emperor this angry. "Impossible," Zexthul roared. "The Third Conquest Fleet was destroyed by prey animals, by soft little creatures that should have been enslaved in hours." Admiral Vexnoth, his uniform torn and his pride shattered, knelt before the throne. "My Emperor, the intelligence reports were wrong. These humans are not what they appeared to be. They have weapons we have never seen before and tactics we do not understand." The Emperor's red eyes blazed with fury. "You commanded 47 ships of the line and you were defeated by a handful of human vessels. Perhaps you have grown too old and weak for command." "My Emperor," Vexnoth said carefully, "I request permission to study the battle recordings. These humans fight in ways that no species in the galaxy has ever fought before. If we can understand their methods, we can defeat them." Zexthul stood from his broken throne and walked to the great window that looked out over the capital city of Zephyria Prime. Below him stretched a city of black metal and red fire, built from the wealth of 100 conquered worlds. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. No species had ever successfully resisted Zephyrian might for more than a few months. "War Marshal Hexeler," the Emperor called to his greatest military commander, "you will take the 1st and 2nd Imperial fleets to human space. You will crush these creatures completely and bring me the head of their leader." War Marshal Hexelar was the most feared Zephyrian warrior alive. He had conquered more worlds than any other commander in Empire history. His personal ship, the Death of Hope, had destroyed entire civilizations. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "It will be done, my Emperor. How many ships do you wish me to take?" "Take everything," Zexthul commanded. 300 warships, 1 million shock troops, every weapon in our arsenal. I want these humans to understand what happens when someone defies the Empire. On Earth, President Caroline Baker stood before the Global Council in emergency session. The victory against the first Zephyrian fleet had given humanity hope, but everyone knew the aliens would return with overwhelming force. Spy satellites had detected massive fleet movements in Zephyrian space. The Empire was preparing for total war. "My fellow humans," President Baker said to the assembled leaders, "we face the greatest threat in our species' history. The Zephyrian Empire controls thousands of worlds and countless alien races. They have decided that humanity must be destroyed or enslaved." General Collins activated the holographic display in the center of the council chamber. It showed the known galaxy with human territory marked in blue and Zephyrian space shown in red. The red area was hundreds of times larger than the blue. "Intelligence reports indicate the Empire is mobilizing their main battle fleets," Collins explained. "We estimate they will bring between 200 and 300 warships to our space. That is 6 times more ships than we destroyed in the first battle." Admiral Claire Thompson, now promoted to Supreme Commander of all human forces, stepped forward. "We cannot meet them in open battle and win, but we do not need to fight them the way they expect. We have advantages they do not understand." The human military had spent months preparing for this moment. While the galaxy saw humans as peaceful explorers and diplomats, the reality was very different. Humanity had been quietly building one of the most advanced and deadly military forces. In known space, Captain Laura Hayes commanded the UES Devastator, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Her ship was part of Operation Prometheus, a secret program that had transformed human shipyards into weapons factories. In the 6 months since first contact, humanity had built more warships than most species built in decades. Hayes received her orders while her ship orbited a hidden military base in the asteroid belt. Her mission was to lead humanity's first offensive strike against the Zephyrian Empire. The target was a military staging area where the aliens were gathering forces for their grand invasion. "Remember," Hayes told her crew, "we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every peaceful species in the galaxy that has been conquered by the Empire. We show them today that bullies can be beaten." The Devastator and 12 other Human ships jumped into hyperspace and headed for Zephyrian territory. Their target was a military base on the edge of Empire space where Admiral Vexnoth was rebuilding his forces. Meanwhile, War Marshal Hexeler's massive fleet was approaching the solar system. The War Marshal stood on the bridge of the death of Hope and studied intelligence reports about human defenses. This time, the Empire had prepared for human tactics. They had developed new shield technologies and weapons designed specifically to counter human kinetic projectiles. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "our spies have identified the locations of major human military bases. We can strike them before they have time to organize their defenses." Hexelar nodded. "Begin the assault. Target their shipyards first, then their command centers. Leave the population centers for last. I want them to watch their military burn before we conquer their worlds." The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Over 300 ships arranged themselves for battle, their weapons powered and ready. It was the largest military force ever assembled by the Empire, but the humans were ready for them. Admiral Thompson had positioned her forces throughout the solar system, using asteroids and moons as cover. Human ships waited in silence, their engines cold and their weapons charged. The aliens would find no easy targets this time. Captain Fletcher, now promoted to admiral after his victory in the first battle, commanded the defense of Earth itself. His ship, the Titan, waited behind the moon with 50 other vessels. They would be humanity's last line of defense if the outer perimeter fell. The battle began when Zephyrian scout ships detected human forces near Jupiter. War Marshal Hexeler ordered his fleet to advance, expecting the humans to retreat as most species did when faced with overwhelming odds. Instead, the humans attacked. Captain Hayes and her strike force had reached their target in Zephyrian space. The military base was heavily defended, but the humans had brought weapons the aliens had never seen before. The Devastator fired quantum torpedoes that could punch through any known defense. Within minutes, the base was a burning ruin. "Target destroyed," Hayes reported to Earth. Beginning secondary objectives. The secondary objectives involved attacking Zephyrian supply lines and communication networks. Human ships struck like lightning, hitting targets across a dozen star systems before the aliens could respond. The Empire's perfect military machine suddenly found itself fighting fires on multiple fronts. Back in the solar system, the main battle raged across 3 days and countless millions of kilometers. The Zephyrians had more ships, but the humans fought with desperate courage and superior tactics. Every human knew that defeat meant the end of their species. Commander Brandon Murphy, now leading an entire fighter wing, coordinated attacks on Zephyrian heavy cruisers. His pilots had developed new techniques for fighting enemies much larger than themselves. They struck at weak points in enemy armor, disabled weapon systems, and created chaos in the alien formations. Dr. Amanda Foster monitored the battle from her command center, coordinating human forces and analyzing enemy tactics. She had helped design most of the weapons being used in the fight, and she watched with professional satisfaction as they proved their worth against the Empire's best technology. The turning point came when Admiral Thompson ordered a coordinated assault on the death of Hope itself. 50 human ships attacked the Zephyrian flagship from all directions at once. War Marshal Hexeler found himself surrounded and outgunned by enemies he had underestimated once again. The death of Hope, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that could be seen from Earth. War Marshal Hexeler, the greatest military commander in Empire history, died knowing that he had been defeated by the species he had thought were weak. When the battle ended 3 days later, the solar system was filled with the wreckage of alien ships. The Zephyrian Empire's greatest fleet had been destroyed, and their most feared commander was dead. Humanity had proven that they could not only defend themselves, but strike back at their enemies with devastating effect. But the war was far from over, and the Empire still had resources the humans could barely imagine. Admiral Vexnoth felt confident as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. The journey had taken 6 months, but finally they had arrived at the home system of the weak species that had dared to refuse the Empire. He expected to find scattered defense ships and frightened colonies begging for mercy. Instead, his sensors detected something that made him pause. There were ships waiting for them, but not the primitive vessels his intelligence reports had described. These ships were sleek and dark, almost invisible against the black of space. They moved with purpose and precision that reminded him of hunting predators. Captain Ryan Fletcher stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, one of humanity's most advanced warships. For months, his ship had been disguised as a research vessel studying the outer planets of the solar system. Now its true nature was revealed. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed panels. Shield generators came online. The Titan transformed from a peaceful explorer into an instrument of war. Fletcher had spent 20 years in the Space Defense Force, but he had never fought aliens before. He studied the enemy fleet through his ship's sensors. The Zephyrian vessels were huge and covered with weapons. They looked like flying fortresses built for conquest and destruction. All ships, Fletcher spoke into his communication system. This is Captain Fletcher. Remember your training. Stay calm, follow the plan, and trust your shipmates. Today we show these aliens that humans are not as weak as they think. The Zephyrian fleet began moving toward the inner system, expecting the human ships to retreat or surrender. Admiral Vexnoth opened a communication channel to the human vessels. Attention, primitive humans. Vexnoth's voice boomed across space. You are looking at the third conquest fleet of the great Zephyrian Empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make your species extinct. Commander Ashley Chen, captain of the UES Phoenix, answered for humanity. Her voice was calm and steady. Attention, Zephyrian fleet. This is the human defense force. You have entered our space without permission and threatened our people. Leave now and no harm will come to you. Continue your advance and face the consequences. Vexnoth laughed. The human captain sounded like she actually believed her tiny ships could fight his mighty fleet. You amuse me, little human. Your ships are toys compared to ours. Watch as we demonstrate the power of the Empire. The largest Zephyrian battleship fired its main plasma cannon at an asteroid near the human fleet. The massive energy beam vaporized the asteroid in seconds, turning solid rock into glowing gas. It was meant to terrify the humans into surrender. Ashley Chen's response was to order the attack. The human ships moved like nothing the Zephyrians had ever seen before. They were fast, agile, and worked together like parts of a single organism. The Titan fired first, launching projectiles that traveled at incredible speeds. The Zephyrians had powerful energy shields, but the human weapons were different. Instead of energy beams, the humans fired solid metal rods accelerated to near light speed. The kinetic projectiles smashed through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. The first Zephyrian destroyer exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Admiral Vexnoth stared in shock as his sensors showed impossible readings. The human weapons had penetrated shields that could stop the most powerful plasma cannons in the galaxy. All ships return fire, Vexnoth ordered. Destroy these insects. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of energy weapons. Plasma bolts and particle beams filled space with deadly light. But the human ships seemed to dance between the attacks. They moved in patterns that made them nearly impossible to hit, while their own weapons found their targets with perfect accuracy. Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Murphy led the first wave of human fighter craft. His squadron of 12 fighters attacked, a Zephyrian heavy cruiser that was 50 times their size. The aliens expected the tiny ships to bounce harmlessly off their armor, but Murphy's fighters carried weapons designed specifically for this moment. The human fighters swarmed around, the huge alien ship like angry insects. They fired streams of projectiles that punched through the cruiser's hull in hundreds of places. Within minutes, the massive vessel was crippled and drifting helplessly. Dr. Amanda Foster watched the battle from the command center hidden deep under the surface of Luna, Earth's moon. She had spent years helping design the weapons that were now proving their worth in combat. The human military had studied every piece of information they could gather about alien technology and found its weaknesses. The Zephyrians build their shields to stop energy weapons, she explained to the officers around her. They never expected to face kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Their armor is designed to spread out heat and energy, but it cannot handle the focused impact of solid matter. In space, the battle continued with devastating results for the Zephyrian fleet. Human ships worked in coordinated groups, supporting each other and covering each other's weaknesses. The aliens had never fought an enemy that used such tactics. Zephyrian warriors were trained for individual combat and single-ship duels, not for fighting an enemy that moved and attacked as a unified force. Captain Fletcher's ship, the Titan, engaged 3 Zephyrian destroyers at once. The enemy ships tried to surround him, but Fletcher had trained for exactly this situation. He used his ship's superior speed and maneuverability to keep the aliens from getting a clear shot, while his weapons systematically destroyed their engines and weapons. Admiral Vexnoth realized his fleet was losing the battle. In 30 years of commanding Zephyrian forces, he had never lost a single engagement. Now he watched as his ships were destroyed or disabled one by one. The humans were not just winning, they were dominating the battle completely. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have lost 18 ships. Our remaining vessels are taking heavy damage. Request permission to retreat." Vexnoth felt rage burning in his chest. The Empire had never retreated from battle, especially not against a species as weak as the humans were supposed to be. But pride would not bring back his dead warriors or repair his broken ships. "All ships," he ordered, "withdraw to jump distance and prepare for hyperspace." The surviving Zephyrian vessels began pulling back from the battle. The human ships followed them, continuing to fire until the aliens were out of range. As the Zephyrian fleet prepared to jump away from the solar system, Admiral Vexnoth sent one final message to the human forces. "This is not over," he transmitted. "The Empire has thousands of ships and millions of warriors. You have won one small battle, but we will return with such force that your worlds will burn." Captain Fletcher answered for humanity. "We will be waiting for you, and next time, bring more ships." The Zephyrian fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of 24 warships and thousands of dead aliens. The first battle between humans and aliens had lasted only 18 minutes. When it was over, the human fleet had lost 2 fighters and suffered minor damage to 3 ships. The humans had proven that they were not the weak prey species the galaxy believed them to be. But the war was far from over. The Zephyrian Empire was vast and powerful, and they would not accept defeat easily. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Admiral Vexnoth was already planning his revenge. On Earth, General Collins received the battle reports with mixed feelings. Humanity had won its first victory, but they had also made a powerful enemy. The Empire would return with more ships and better weapons, and the next battle would be much harder. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were full of surprises. Admiral Vexnoth received the report about the new species while eating his morning meal of live prey. The report came from War Prime Kextal and contained detailed information about the creatures called humans. Vexnoth read it twice, then laughed, so hard that other officers in the dining hall turned to look at him. The humans were even weaker than the Empire's scientists had guessed. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no claws or fangs. Their bones were hollow like bird bones. Their skin was thinner than paper. They moved slowly and could barely lift their own body weight. Most amusing of all, they actually believed they could say no to the great Zephyrian Empire. Vexnoth was one of the Empire's most successful admirals. He had conquered 43 different species in his long career. Some had been strong fighters like the rock-eating Morvanes. Others had been clever like the shape-changing Thessians. But none had been as pathetic as these humans appeared to be. The report included video recordings from the meeting. Vexnoth watched the 3 humans standing in Kextal's throne room. They looked terrified, which was smart. Their leader, the one called Jake Morrison, tried to act brave, but his voice shook when he spoke. When Kextal hit him, the human flew across the room like a toy. Any Zephyrian warrior would have barely felt such a blow. "Sir," said his aide, a young officer named Kextan, "the Emperor wants to see you immediately." Vexnoth made his way to the Imperial Palace on Zephyria Prime. The throne room was a massive space filled with the skulls and weapons of conquered enemies. Emperor Zexthul sat on his throne made from the bones of the last species that had dared to resist the Empire. "Admiral," the Emperor said, "I have read the report about these humans. They seem like they might make good servants, but first they must be taught their place. I am giving you command of the Third Conquest Fleet. Go to their worlds and show them what happens when someone refuses the Empire." Vexnoth bowed deeply. "It will be an honor, my Emperor. How many ships should I take?" "Take the usual force for conquering a new species: 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and 50,000 shock troops. That should be more than enough to handle these soft creatures." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "But Admiral, I want you to be careful. Do not destroy their cities or kill too many of them. These humans might be useful as workers and servants. Scare them enough to surrender, but leave most of them alive." 3 weeks later, Vexnoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crusher of Worlds, as his fleet prepared to leave Zephyrian space. His ships were the most powerful in the galaxy. Each heavy cruiser could destroy a moon. The destroyers were fast and deadly. The troop transport ships carried the Empire's finest soldiers. The fleet's intelligence officer, Commander Rexmol, brought Vexnoth the final report on human military capabilities. What he read made the Admiral shake his head in amazement. The Keo. Humans had no real warships. Their largest military vessels were converted cargo ships with light weapons bolted onto them. They had no shields, no plasma cannons, no quantum torpedoes. Their fighters were tiny compared to Zephyrian warcraft. Most of their weapons seemed to be primitive projectile throwers that fired small metal bullets. "Commander," Vexnoth said, "are you sure this information is correct? These humans sound like they are still using Stone Age technology." "The information comes from our best spies, sir. We have been watching human space for months. Their military is a joke compared to ours. They spend more money on hospitals and schools than on weapons." Vexnoth studied the star charts showing human territory. They controlled only a few dozen worlds, compared to the Empire's thousands. Their total population was less than what lived on a single Zephyrian planet. They had been in space for less than 200 years, while the Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000. "Sir," Rexmol continued, "our psychologists have studied human behavior patterns. They are pack animals that avoid fighting whenever possible. When threatened, they usually run away or hide. They have never fought a real war against another spacefaring species." The fleet jumped into hyperspace and began the long journey to human territory. During the trip, Vexnoth spent time planning the conquest. It would be quick and easy. A few demonstrations of Zephyrian firepower would make the humans surrender immediately. Meanwhile, in human space, Jake Morrison's message had finally reached Earth. The diplomatic corps' emergency signal activated communication networks across all human worlds. Within hours, every human government knew that first contact had failed and war was coming. General Peter Collins sat in the emergency meeting room deep under the North American capital city. Around the table sat the leaders of every human military force. The room was quiet as they listened to Jake Morrison's recorded message. "The aliens gave us 1 day to surrender," Jake's voice said through the speakers. "They want to make all humans into slaves. They think we are weak and helpless. I do not believe we can negotiate with these creatures. I believe they will attack whether we surrender or not." Admiral Claire Thompson, the head of Earth's Space Defense Force, stood up and walked to the wall screen. It showed a map of known space with human colonies marked in blue and the approaching alien fleet marked in red. "How long do we have?" asked General Collins. "Based on their ship speeds, about 6 months until they reach the outer colonies," Thompson replied. "Maybe 8 months until they get to Earth." General Collins looked around the room at the other military leaders. They all knew what had to be done, but none of them wanted to say it out loud. For over a century, humanity had built a reputation as a peaceful species. They had never started a war and had always tried to solve problems with words instead of weapons. But they had never stopped preparing for the possibility that someday, someone would force them to fight. "Activate Operation Phoenix," General Collins said quietly. "Send the order to all commands. Full military mobilization. We have 6 months to get ready for war." Across human space, secret orders went out to ships and stations that the galaxy thought were used for peaceful research and exploration. On hidden military bases, weapons that had never been tested in real combat were loaded onto ships. Soldiers who had spent years training for a war they hoped would never come received their final orders. The humans the Zephyrians had met were diplomats and scientists, people trained for peace. But humanity had other kinds of people too. They had soldiers, strategists, and warriors who had spent their entire lives learning how to fight and win. Admiral Vexnoth had no idea what was waiting for him in human space. His intelligence reports had told him about the peaceful humans who built hospitals and schools. They had not told him about the humans who built weapons in secret and planned for wars in the shadows. The Zephyrian fleet continued its journey toward human space, confident that the conquest would be easy. Behind them, the Empire's propaganda machines began telling the galaxy about the great victory that was coming. Soon, they promised, another weak species would bow before Zephyrian might. But in the darkness between the stars, human ships began to move into position. The galaxy was about to learn something new about the species from the small blue world. Humans truly did prefer peace, but when forced to fight, they fought to win. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the stars through the main window. His ship was the first human vessel built for meeting alien races. The Liberty had no weapons, no armor, and no shields. It was made only for peace talks and showing other species that humans wanted to be friends. Lisa Rodriguez walked up to him. She was his second in command and the best officer he had ever worked with. Lisa had spent years learning how to talk to aliens and understand their ways. She looked worried as she checked her tablet. "The alien ships are getting closer," Lisa said. "They are big ships, much bigger than ours. The computer says they have many weapons." Jake nodded. He had seen the reports too. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. They were a warrior race that had conquered many worlds and many other alien species. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects with hard shells and 4 arms. They were strong, fast, and loved to fight. Dr. Kevin Walsh joined them on the bridge. Kevin was their expert on alien life. He had studied every piece of information they had about the Zephyrians. Kevin carried a bag full of gifts from Earth: music, art, books, and samples of human food. He hoped these gifts would help start a friendship. "Remember," Jake said to his crew, "we are here to make peace. No matter what they say or do, we stay calm. We show them that humans are good people who want to help, not hurt." The Liberty's communication system made a loud beeping sound. The alien ships were calling them. Lisa pressed some buttons and the main screen showed the inside of an alien ship. A huge creature sat on what looked like a throne made of metal and bones. The creature was War Prime Kextal, the leader of this Zephyrian fleet. He was bigger than any human, with black shell-like skin that looked like armor. His forearms ended in claws that could cut through metal. His eyes were red and angry. When he spoke, his voice was deep and scary. "Small, soft things," Kextal said in perfect English. "You dare to fly in space that belongs to the great Zephyrian Empire. You will come to my ship now and bow before me." Jake took a deep breath. This was not starting well, but he had to try. "Greetings, War Prime Kextal. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human race. We come in peace. We want to talk and maybe become friends. We have gifts from our world to show our good intentions." Kextal laughed. It was a terrible sound, like breaking glass. "Friends? You think the mighty Zephyrian Empire makes friends with weak prey animals? You will come to my ship and learn your place, or we will destroy you." Lisa looked at Jake with concern. She wanted to suggest they leave, but Jake shook his head. They had come too far to give up now. Humanity had spent years preparing for this moment. They had to try. "We will come to your ship," Jake said, "but as equals, not as servants. We hope you will listen to what we have to say." An hour later, Jake, Lisa, and Kevin stood in the shuttle bay of the Zephyrian warship. The place was huge and dark. Metal spikes covered the walls, and the air smelled like blood and fear. 20 Zephyrian warriors stood around them. Each warrior carried weapons that could kill a human with one shot. Kextal sat on his throne in the middle of the room. He looked down at the three humans like they were insects. The humans looked very small next to the giant aliens, but they stood straight and proud. "So," Kextal said, "these are the famous humans. I expected something more impressive. You look like the kind of creatures we keep as pets on our worlds." Kevin stepped forward with his bag of gifts. "War Prime. We brought these from Earth to show you our culture. This music box plays songs that help human children sleep. This book contains our greatest stories. This small device can translate any language." Kextal picked up the music box with one claw. He crushed it into pieces and let the broken parts fall to the floor. "We do not need your weak culture. The Empire takes what it wants and destroys the rest." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "We understand you are a strong people, but strength can be used for building as well as destroying. Humans have much to offer. We are good at solving problems, creating new things, and helping others. Together, we could do amazing things." "Together?" Kextal stood up from his throne. He was twice as tall as Jake and 3 times as wide. "You speak of working together like we are equals. But look at you. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. Your skin is soft like a baby's. Your bones would break if I squeezed you. You are prey animals who somehow learned to build ships." Lisa stepped closer to Jake. She could see the other Zephyrian warriors moving into position around the room. This was becoming dangerous. Kextal continued talking. "The Empire has a use for your kind. You will serve us as slaves. Your worlds will become farms to feed our armies. Your people will work in our mines and factories. This is the only choice you have." Jake looked directly into Kextal's red eyes. "That is not a choice we can accept. Humans are free people. We will not be slaves to anyone." The room became very quiet. All the Zephyrian warriors stopped moving. Kextal's eyes grew even redder, with anger. No one had ever said no to the Zephyrian Empire and lived to tell about it. "You refuse?" Kextal asked. "You actually refuse the generous offer of the great Empire?" "We refuse," Jake said firmly. "We came here hoping to find friends. If you cannot be friends, then we will leave in peace. But we will never be slaves." Kextal moved faster than any human could follow. His huge hand hit Jake across the face so hard that the human captain flew backward and crashed into the wall. Lisa and Kevin rushed to help him, but the Zephyrian warriors pointed their weapons at them. Jake got back to his feet. Blood ran from his nose and mouth, but he stood straight. He looked at Kextal without fear. "You have one day," Kextal said. "One day to think about what I have told you. Then you will surrender your worlds to the Empire, or we will take them by force. Your choice, soft little human." The 3 humans were escorted back to their shuttle. As they flew back to the Liberty, none of them spoke. They all knew that this first meeting with an alien race had gone very badly. Back on the Liberty, Jake sat in his captain's chair and composed a message to Earth. The message would take months to reach home, but he had to send it. War was coming whether humans wanted it or not. Emperor Zexithul stared at the reports from the solar system battle with disbelief turning to rage. His greatest fleet was destroyed. His most skilled commander was dead. The humans had not only survived but had struck back at Empire territory, with devastating effect. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire faced an enemy that could actually hurt them. The Emperor's advisors cowered in the throne room as he paced back and forth like a caged predator. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke, and his voice echoed off the walls built from the bones of conquered enemies. "If we cannot defeat them in battle," Zexthul said, "then we will show them the price of defying us. Activate the planet. Killers, target their agricultural worlds first, let them watch their food sources burn." His chief advisor, an ancient Zephyrian named Texmor, dared to speak. "My emperor, using planet killers against a species that has shown it can fight back, might unite the galaxy against us. Many of our subject races already whisper about human victories." Zexthul struck Texmor with one massive fist, sending the advisor crashing into a pillar. "Let them whisper. When human worlds are ash floating in space, the galaxy will remember why they fear the Empire. The order went out to hidden weapons platforms scattered throughout Zephyrian space. Planet killers were the Empire's most terrible weapons devices that could crack a world's surface and turn entire continents into molten rock. They had been used only a few times in Empire history, when examples needed to be made. The first target was New Eden, a farming world on the edge of human space. 20,000 humans lived there, growing food for other colonies. They had no military defenses and no way to evacuate before the planet killer arrived. Captain Jake Morrison, promoted to admiral after surviving the first alien contact, received the emergency transmission from New Eden as the planet killer weapon began its deadly work. He watched in horror as entire continents disappeared in fire and lava. 20,000 innocent people died in minutes, their only crime being human. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving similar reports from 4 other agricultural colonies. The aliens are destroying our food production worlds." Morrison felt something change inside him as he watched the death of New Eden. He had spent his career trying to build peace between species, believing that all intelligent life could find common ground. The Zephyrians had taught him that some enemies could not be reasoned with or reformed. On Earth, the Global Council held another emergency session. President Baker stood before leaders whose faces showed the same cold anger that Morrison felt. The Zephyrians had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. "They want to terrorize us into surrender by murdering civilians," Baker said. "They believe that if they kill enough innocent people, we will abandon our freedom to save the rest. They are wrong." General Collins activated new orders that had been prepared for exactly this situation. Operation Final Justice is now active. Admiral Morrison, you are in command of Task Force Retribution. Your mission is to end this war by any means necessary. Morrison's new fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever assembled before. It included every available warship, experimental weapons that had never been tested in combat, and soldiers trained for the darkest kind of warfare. The humans had decided that if the Zephyrians wanted to escalate the conflict, they would learn what human escalation looked like. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the xenobiologist who had tried to build bridges with the Zephyrians, now worked with the military to identify critical weaknesses in the Empire's infrastructure. His peaceful mission had failed, but his knowledge of alien psychology would help humanity win the war. The Empire depends on a complex network of resource extraction and manufacturing, Walsh explained to Morrison's staff. They have conquered so many worlds that they need constant shipments of materials and food. If we can disrupt that network, their entire civilization will collapse. Colonel Brandon Murphy, now commanding an elite strike force, led the first raids against Zephyrian supply lines. His ships carried new weapons designed by human scientists who had studied alien technology and found ways to turn it against its creators. The weapons did not just destroy enemy facilities, they made them permanently unusable. The nanobots that Murphy's forces deployed were invisible killers that consumed specific metals and alloys used in Zephyrian technology. Entire industrial worlds found their machinery dissolving around them as the microscopic weapons spread through their infrastructure. The Empire's war machine began eating itself from within. Admiral Claire Thompson coordinated with rebel groups on worlds conquered by the Empire. Many alien species had been enslaved for generations, waiting for someone strong enough to challenge Zephyrian rule. The news that humans were winning battles against the Empire gave these rebels hope and weapons. Captain Laura Hayes led humanitarian missions to liberate concentration camps where the Empire kept slave workers. Her ships rescued millions of aliens from dozens of different species, showing the galaxy that humans fought for freedom, not conquest. The Empire's client species began to revolt as news of human victories spread. The Tessarians, enslaved for 3 centuries, rose up against their Zephyrian masters. The Morvanes, forced to mine radioactive materials that poisoned their homeworld, destroyed the facilities that had been killing them slowly. Emperor Zexthul found his empire crumbling, from within as well as under attack from without. Rebellion spread from world to world faster than his forces could suppress it. The humans had shown the galaxy that the mighty Zephyrian Empire could be beaten, and that knowledge was more dangerous than any weapon. Captain Ryan Fletcher, now an admiral commanding the defense of Earth, received intelligence reports that made him smile grimly. The Empire was withdrawing forces from the front lines to deal with rebellions on their own worlds. The hunters had become the hunted. The final battle came when Morrison's fleet reached Zephyria Prime itself, the heart of the Empire. The planet was surrounded by defensive stations and patrolled by the last intact Zephyrian fleet. Emperor Zexthul had gathered every remaining ship to defend his throne world, but Morrison did not attack with conventional weapons. Instead, his forces deployed the most devastating weapon humanity had ever created, the truth. Using captured Zephyrian communication networks, human specialists broadcast the complete story of the war to every world in the Empire. The galaxy learned that humans had sought peace and been attacked without provocation. They saw recordings of the diplomatic meetings where humans had offered friendship and been answered with violence. They watched footage of human colonies being destroyed by planet-killer weapons, innocent civilians murdered for the crime of being human. The propaganda machine that had held the Empire together for 1,000 years collapsed overnight. Zephyrian citizens learned that their government had started a war of conquest against a peaceful species and lost it through incompetence and cruelty. The Emperor's own people turned against him. Emperor Zexthul, faced with rebellion on his own homeworld and human fleets approaching his palace, made one final desperate attempt to maintain power. He challenged Admiral Morrison to single combat, claiming that ancient Zephyrian law would make the winner ruler of the Empire. Morrison accepted the challenge, but not to rule the Empire. He fought to end it forever. The battle took place in the Emperor's throne room before cameras that broadcast across the galaxy. Zexthul was twice Morrison's size, and armed with natural weapons that could cut through steel. But Morrison had something the Emperor lacked: the support of every free being in the galaxy. When Morrison stood over the defeated Emperor, he made humanity's final statement to the galaxy. "We did not seek this fight, but we finished it. Let this be remembered by anyone who thinks that peaceful people are weak people. We will defend ourselves and our friends with whatever force is necessary." The Zephyrian Empire surrendered unconditionally. The trial that followed established new laws for how species would interact in the galaxy. Those who sought peace would find humans to be generous neighbors and reliable allies. Those who chose aggression would face the consequences of their actions. The war had lasted less than 2 years, but it changed the galaxy forever. Humanity emerged not as conquerors, but as liberators, having freed dozens of species from Zephyrian slavery. The quiet species from the small blue world had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are those who fight only when they have no choice. Jake Morrison returned to his diplomatic duties, but now his peaceful missions were backed by the promise of swift and decisive action against aggressors. The galaxy had learned that humans truly did prefer peace, but when forced to fight, they fought with fire. The fire of superior technology, coordinated strategy, and absolute determination to protect what they held dear. In the years that followed, human diplomatic vessels continued to carry no weapons, but every species in the galaxy knew what stood behind each peaceful mission. The humans had proven once and forever that the best way to keep the peace is to demonstrate, completely and without question, the consequences of breaking it.